But now, in the midst of her farewell tour, Mary Black talks about the things that have kept her going.
What's it all about? Why are we here? Is there a God? What happens when we die? In this series, I'm talking to public figures about these questions. Like me, none of them claims to be a religious expert, but all of them have, at times, had cause to think about the meaning of life. Hello, welcome, thank you for joining us, and our guest this time is Mary Black. And Mary, thank you for taking time off.
My pleasure.
Now, it seems to me that you are celebrating a significant birthday this year. You have published your autobiography called Down the Crooked Road, and you are part way through what you claim to be your absolutely final international tour.
That's right.
And it strikes me, if I may say so, that you're far too young and good looking to be talking about retiring at this stage. What's the story?
I'm retiring from the road, if you like, the hard graft of touring, travelling from town to town. I feel that there's a lot of things I want to do and I don't seem to have time to do them. And I'm looking at my life and saying, well, I've only got one chance at it. I want to have time to spend with now my beautiful two granddaughters, more time with them if I can. I want to travel a bit more and see the world rather than just fly through it. Even though I still love to sing, I'll never stop loving singing and I love to perform. I think I just take a little back seat a little bit.
OK, let's go back. You're a true dub, born and reared in Charlemagne Street off the South Circular Road. I know you had three brothers and I know your single sister, Frances. And I know your mother was from Dublin, Patty, and your father, Kevin, was from Rathlin Island, up the coast. Tell me about that household and that childhood.
Well, Charlemagne Street was just full of tenement houses. And our house was a little different because we had a closed door. Tenement houses didn't have closed doors. You'd have 4 or 5, maybe 6 families, depending on the size of the house, living on different levels in these big houses. But Daddy, when he moved in, made sure the door was locked and everyone had a key.
So you were posh a bit?
We were a bit posh for Charlemagne Street, but at the same time, when I went to school, I realised that we were one of the poor kids from Charlemagne Street, if you know what I mean. Anyway, growing up there was a happy childhood. We were never hungry and we were always kept warm with lots of love and the music, of course, was a very special part of who we were as growing up there. My father seemed to be always bringing home instruments to the house and leaving them lying around. I think that was the way he kind of encouraged us to play music. We all sang.
OK. Now, then later on you went to St. Louis in Rathmines,
yes.
Which was a fee-paying school, incidentally, and for
well, there was a private side, and then for the national school there was a public side, so I was able to go to that.
Okay.
Yeah. So
you came across snobbery and class in St. Louis. Tell me about that.
Well, the nuns were very. They probably had their favourites in the classroom because the parents would be up and maybe giving money or whatever they did. And, you know, my mother didn't like nuns. She never liked nuns. And there was one incident where I was very young, Sister Norbert, I was in the classroom and I had hearing problems when I was young before I got my tonsils out. And she was asking me a question and I didn't hear her. So the next thing she came down with the bata, which is your pointer stick for the blackboard, and whack down on my little baby hands. And I came home and never even told my mother. And there were big black bruises right across both my hands. Well, my mother nearly lost her reason. She said, the nerve of that nun. I'm going up in the morning, going to pull the veil off her, tear the veil off her. Mammy had a temper. And of course, when my father came in, oh, Mary, will you stop? Patsy, will you relax? He says, you'll only make it worse for the child. So she didn't go up and tear the veil off her, thankfully. But she was very, very mad. Mm.
But then you must have realised, and you must realise by now, that the real purpose of you being there, of course, was to be indoctrinated with the Roman Catholic faith.
That's right.
And I wonder, that did happen, of course. I wonder how much of that has stuck, Mary.
Well, I grew up very much a Catholic, very Catholic family. We said the rosary for the whole month of May. We knelt down and Daddy would lead the rosary and we'd answer, and I was a very good girl. I was brought up on fear, I suppose, through the Catholic Church, that if you sinned, if it hadn't happened to you, you'd go to hell and stuff like that. And for that reason, I was a very good girl. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. It does teach you morals and stuff like that. But I think it's wrong to teach any religion or any doctrine by fear. And so as I grew up, I began to get a little disillusioned. And I remember one moment in the 80s, there was a recession at the time, it would have been the early 80s. And I was walking out by Crumlin, and I saw all these people out struggling, working class, small, tiny little houses, and people doing their best to make ends meet. And you could feel there was poverty, and hardship. Then I walked by St. Bernadette's Church there in Crumlin, and I walked on, and there's this massive big house, behind the church, and big garden, beautifully kept, and an amazing big house. Then I started to think about my mother, who'd be struggling no matter what she had. The money for the church had to be there in the envelope, the Easter dues at Christmas, and then the envelopes used to come every week, and you'd have to put the money in. And I began to think, these people were struggling absolutely to feed their families, and there where they were, the priority was to give it to the church. And from then on, I began to really look at how wealthy the Catholic Church was. You look at Rome and all the beautiful churches all over the world, fabulous, in prime locations. I thought to myself, well, with all the hungry people and all the poor people and the people who are struggling, there's an awful lot of money there that hasn't been used in the right way. And those things started to come into my mind. And before long, I had lost my faith. I had faith of my own, I always prayed.
Okay, let me ask you then, you were instilled with the love of Jesus. What do you now think Jesus is or was?
Well, I'm questioning everything now, I don't, to be honest, I wonder, are we all being conned? I just wonder about it. I don't know. Again, I feel there's a part of me that has that guilt of saying, I don't believe in Christ. I do believe there's a higher being out there that's looking over it, the whole thing. I don't understand it. I don't know what it is. I don't know. I mean, I think God is everywhere too. So I am in a very confused state as we speak.
I'll come back to that later. So let's move on then. You're established and you're doing your thing and you're gigging around and being very successful as a singer. And then there dawns the evening when you come across Mr. Joe O'Reilly. Some enchanted evening across a crowded room. Was this instant bingo, this is him? Well,
I knew him for a long time before that. I had not very well. I mean, we were in a gang kind of together, and we happened to go to this football match. It was up in Navan. Somewhere on the way back, we stopped off in a pub for a drink. We were all sitting at this big long table, and there was great crack. And somebody said something funny, and I threw my head back laughing, and I looked at Joe, and he was laughing. And something happened, bang, in an instant. I remember it very, very clearly. And it was only afterwards when Joe and I got together, he talked about the same moment, that exact moment.
What happened?
This feeling inside, it's just a thing. Yeah, it was like an orchestra almost playing. You know, that feeling of something.
Oh, Mary.
No, I'm not joking you. No, I'm not joking you. Something happened. Something instant happened.
And it was somehow you know.
Somehow you know.
You know even then.
That's exactly it.
It's a lovely story.
And
bang. And he said the same thing happened to him.
In the exact same moment. He was talking to me about it and I said, I don't believe you.
And what did you do about that then?
Well, it took us about 3 or 4 weeks to kind of, for him to ask me out. And I think I did cartwheels all the way home.
Cartwheels?
Cartwheels.
So
with
joyous.
My friend.
So
joyous was
were
I.
You?
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay. So then later on, when you were married and all of that, he became your manager as well as your husband and your agent and all of that.
Well, he became my manager through default, I suppose, because I was getting these calls for people, and it was more and more people asking me to do this thing and that thing. And I had difficulty saying no. And Joe said, this is ridiculous, I'll take the calls and we'll decide which ones. You can do a certain amount and we decide what you'll do and what you won't do.
That proximity of business and marriage, did it make the marriage a stronger marriage, or what? How did you handle that?
I think it made it stronger. I think in that we weren't living in each other's ears all the time. I mean, as my career started to grow from the day we got married, really, it really started to take off. You know, we had separation. He didn't travel with me. He'd stay at home with the kids, and as the children came along, and we never ran out of things to talk about, ever. I mean, and that's what I think. And we're pals as well as husband and wife and all that.
A rock.
Yeah, he protected me a lot too. Because he was my manager and he was my record company, he wouldn't put me under undue pressure to do things that maybe a manager might, you know.
Quite.
And so he would totally understand if I was saying, oh God, no, please, I don't want to have to travel to such and such. And he'd say, okay, well then we won't do that, you know.
Wonderful. It occurs to me, by the way, that although you're not in love with the Catholic Church, you took strong measures to be married in the Catholic Church, in the University Church in Stephen's Green, which was your parish church, was it?
Yeah.
Was that just to keep Mammy happy? And
No, I think I was 24 then. I was still in the claws of the whole Catholic ethos. I mean, I probably had stopped going to confession. The priest who married us was a very good friend. And I sang at his ordination, and he married us. And then I sang at his wedding because he met his wife at my wedding. So there you go.
So there you go. That's the way.
That's the way life is.
Let us not further inquire into that. Tell me about now the postnatal depression after Conor was born.
First, Conor was the eldest.
You went into a real dive.
Yeah. It kind of came on me, it wasn't instant. I came home with this beautiful baby, and he was a massive baby, and I had a very traumatic birth.
He was 11 pounds.
Yeah, he was, just short of 11 pounds. But he was born and he was healthy, and I got over the physical side of it and everything was fine. And then I found myself, I was at home with this beautiful little baby, who was a very good baby, by the way, and I might have the television on. I began to look at the news, and there was terrible things happening in the world, and, you know, wars and disasters of sorts. And it started to get in on me. And I began to think, what have I done, brought this child into this world? And I began to think very, just darkly, you know, like everything was dark, began to get dark. And I became very quiet and introverted, and I worried about everything, and I wasn't sleeping then. And I got to the stage where I was just a basket case, and I had to go for help. I remember, and I had kept it from Joe for a while as best I could, because I kept thinking, this is ridiculous. What have I to be depressed about? I didn't really understand postnatal depression. There wouldn't have been that much talk about it, you know. So eventually I had to go to a doctor, and I ended up going to St. Pat's and talking to this counsellor and this doctor and specialists, and I got on, they put me on medication, and by degrees I came back around. Yeah.
And you didn't want to work, you didn't want to sing, you didn't want to appear in public, nothing like that. And then Christy Moore came knocking on your door.
Yeah. Out of the blue, Christy knocked at my door. He was living in Rialto at the time, and I was surprised to see him. I had Conor in my arms. He was probably about 9 months old at the time, and I said, sure, come on in. And he said to me, listen, I'm doing 2 nights in the National Concert Hall. He said, I'd love you to do support, to open the show for me. And I was kind of the initial thing is kind of, oh, I'm not really singing now, and I don't really have a guitar player. He said, but sure, Declanson is playing with me. I'm sure he'd be delighted to play few songs with you. You can get together, there's plenty of time. So I had no real excuse, and I thought it was so nice of him. I said, okay, well, maybe, we'll do it. So he said, well, you know, what's your fee? And I said, fee? Here I am, scratching my head. So suddenly I'm going like this, what am I worth?
Hello. So
I said, I didn't want to undercharge myself. So I just blurted out £200 at the time, which in the 80s was like phenomenal amount of money. And I think he was like, okay. Because he'd said to me, well, what do you think you're worth? But I laughed about it afterwards, and I laughed with Christy about it after. I said, Christy, I can't believe I asked you for €200. I mean, he was doing me a big favour. But anyway, he paid me the €200, fair play to him, and everything was fine. And the great thing was, I met up with Declan, and Declan and we always hit it off. So we got together and rehearsed a few songs. And the very first song I sang that night, of the first night of the National Concert Hall, was The Rose of Allendale. And I remember looking at Declan and him looking at me, and we both knew that something had happened to click. You know, we found something special. I did anyway. And I was bouncing off him, he was bouncing off me. I gave more, he gave more. He kind of breathed the song with me, if you know what I mean. He felt my emotion and moved with it, and moved back and moved with it. And I think that's a very special thing. And from that moment, really, we both decided, let's move forward together through many great albums.
I'm going to ask you now, do you have a special talent? You know you have a special talent. You've known since you were very young. Is that a God-given talent as far as Mary Black is concerned?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's inherent. It's something that not everybody has. So it comes from somewhere. You know, where does it come from? It has to be a God-given talent.
And your reaction to it, do you feel grateful for that?
Absolutely. I think anyone who has a talent should pursue that talent. You know, if you're willing to work and you're willing to put the time in, put the effort in, but also you need a bit of luck. And I was lucky that certain things happened to me as well. And with all that, I think I developed my career, and I've been very lucky.
Now, I know, obviously, you don't write all your own songs, but you choose songs very carefully. I'm looking at the list: No Frontiers, Past the Point of Rescue, A Woman's Heart, and you've sung about all kinds of emotions and sometimes dark places. What is the process? Do you have an instinct that says, the minute you hear a song, that's for me?
It happens differently for certain songs. I mean, for the most part, I get a feeling when I hear it. I think that there's something happening in the emotion of that song that's affecting me. And so I say, well, that's enough for me to develop that song. Sometimes you might just give it a second or third listen, and then you might hear something. So it becomes very personal then, you know. So many people have said to me, oh, your music has got me over these rough times, be it illness or loss of some sort, death, illness, all that sort of thing, were tough times. And they're hearing something in the songs that maybe I'm saying, really, you know, because that's the way music is and the way...
Now, when your dad died, you brought him back to Rathlin Island to bury him, as they say, at home. And when you were leaving the island, something happened. Tell me about that sort of...
He never stopped loving Rathlin, and his dream is always to go back there when he died and be buried with his mother and his father. And so he was. And all the islanders came and took turns to carry him to the graveyard. It was absolutely beautiful. He would have been so proud. The next morning I had to leave. I was starting a tour. And onto the boat. It was a beautiful, calm morning, strangely enough. And as the boat pulled out, the flowers from the grave had just come around that boat and left a trail behind as we went out. Well, it just struck me so deeply. I felt that Daddy was saying thanks. I felt that that was his way of saying thanks. I mean, there were other boats moving around and the flowers weren't around them. It was an amazing moment. I just felt that Daddy was close to me then.
Do you think you'll see them again?
Not in the form that I saw them before. I think the spirit doesn't die. I think the spirit lives on. Where it goes or how it looks or what we don't understand, we'll never know, and we won't know till we get there ourselves, you know. But I think I might. I think I'll see the spirit of them again. And if I don't, sure, I'll just die and the lights will go out anyway, so I won't know any different. But I think their spirit was so strong and in me as well that I think I will see.
And do you feel a sense of them around you, looking after you, minding you every day?
Definitely.
Oh, do you?
I pray to my mother. I talk to her. I suppose it's like prayer. I sometimes pray as well when my back is to the wall. I don't forget my prayers and hope that someone's listening. But it's usually to my mother I pray. If I'm looking for help, for example, if there's something I'm worried about, or if I need if there's something I need or something I want or I'm worried about, I'll ask her to help me. And I say, through whatever channel you can channel for me. And she does look out for me. She does. She's performed a miracle or two, I think, myself.
You think she's performed a miracle or two?
I won't go into the detail of it, but I asked her, I said, if ever you can do anything for me, do it for me on this one. And she did. Now, is that faith? That is faith, isn't it?
Tell me about your friend and drummer, Dave Earley, who died in a car crash. And you had a dream about him.
It was devastating. It was so sudden that people didn't get to say goodbye, or I suppose there was that words left unsaid. And one night I had this very, very vivid dream, and I have had a few of these type of dreams with different people. I was walking up to Leonard's Corner, and I saw Dave on the corner of the street. And as I got closer, he had a smile on his face, and I smiled back. And he said, "Oh my God, I can't believe you can see me." He kept saying, "Can you see me?" I said, "Yes, Dave, I can see you. I can see you. Are you okay?" He says, "Yeah." He says, I want to tell you to please tell Mary I'm okay." That's his partner. "Please tell her I'm okay. I'm okay. Will you do that for me?" And he was so happy that I could see him, and we chatted just for a little bit, and then he just kind of disappeared, and I woke up. But it wasn't just like a normal dream. I dream every night. Every night I dream. And you know, this was different to one of any of my other dreams. It stood out.
And did you pass on the message?
Absolutely. I rang Mary the next day. I said, "Can I come up? I want to tell you something. And it did give her some solace, I think, you know.
Are you given to that kind of thing then, do you think?
I think I would be open to it. Sometimes I get a sense of something being in a room or something. I wouldn't see it. But spirits, you know, I think there are spirits out there.
When you're on tour, or even when you're on tour in Ireland or elsewhere all around the world, are you ever tempted to go into a church?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Oh, you do?
I do, yeah. And it wouldn't have to be a Catholic church, any church. But they're mostly Catholic, you know. And no, I love going into churches and lighting candles. And it's just having that space and, I suppose, time to really just get quiet and think and pray, yeah. Yeah, I do pray. I pray for my children all the time, my grandchildren. I just want them to be all right.
Odd that you should say, because I was about to say to you, the angst that goes on between a mother and leaving her children. You've had to be around the world on occasions thinking of your children at home, and the terrible guilt and the terrible worry and concern that you have. Tell me about that.
You know, it's funny. When Danny was only about 8 weeks old, I had committed to a tour with Dannon. And Dolores was with me in the band at that time, Dolores Keane, and we were just the best of pals, and still are. We always shared a room, and I went to bed, and I was lying there, and next of all, I shot up in the bed, and I said, "Dolores," and she said, "What is it, Loveen?" You know, the way she would. I said, "I can't see Danny's face. I can see Connor's face. I can see Joe. I can see my mother. I can see everybody. I just can't see Danny's face." And the terrible pain that gave me, I mean, it was just awful that I couldn't see my own child's face in my mind, you know, and I suppose that was the culmination of guilt, worry, as a mother being away from your young baby. Sometimes I'd be in a hotel somewhere and we'd have a night off or something. I'd say, "What the hell am I doing here? I should be at home putting my kids to bed." And I would say to myself, "I don't think I can do this anymore."
What is their reaction to you now telling them this, and you've written about it in your book?
Yeah. Well, they realised how tough it was. I mean, maybe they didn't realise it at the time. I remember when Danny was reading the book, he was walking, he said, "Mum, I'm in the tube, I can't put it down. There's so many stories in here I never heard before." I couldn't believe it, you know. And then Roisin, because Roisin worked on the book with me, there'd be stories I would tell her, I said, "Oh, I don't think I should tell that." Of course you have to tell that, you know. Maybe I shouldn't be saying, you know, no. So she was the boss, really, you know.
This is the story and this is the way it is.
She was very good.
Okay, second last question. The programme is called Meaning of Life. For Mary Black, what is the meaning of life?
The meaning of life is family, is love, which is one and the same thing for me. And I suppose being good to your fellow man. And if we could all do that, wouldn't this be just the best ride ever? I know it sounds very idealistic, But there's so, and the world doesn't seem to learn from its mistakes, and there's constant wars going on. It hurts me to see so many people suffer at the hands of, and sometimes it's religious differences that cause the problems, and that's why I have my problems with religion as well, organised religion. Yeah, it's simple as that, you know.
So when Mary Black pops her clogs and you make your way to the pearly gates, final question, and you realise that what the nuns in St. Louis were talking about is actually true, and he is there to meet you, what will Mary Black say to God?
I would actually say to him, how could you let all that happen? How could you let all those children suffer like that? All those people die. Why? That's what I'd say. And I'd wait for the answer. I hope he'd give me one. I hope he has one for me, and I hope I meet him. Or her.
Thank you very much. Well done. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate.
And if you've been affected by issues raised tonight on the meaning of life, there's support information available online at nurturecharity.org. Next week, Byrne is joined by Charles Spencer, but next tonight it's The Week in Politics.